Good evening, everybody. My camera needs a bit of adjustment, and I've got no idea if audio from the computer is working, so let me just try that real quick. It is. Fantastic. Right, okay. We'll worry about audio in the game once we get there. The game isn't even running at the moment. Before we get in the game, what I want to do, yes, pink mouse, woo, is go through the theory. Because then going in the game, hopefully you can relate back to the theory. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there's 23 slides to get through, and lots of waffle. So yes, it's PowerPoint crazy tonight. But we're learning something, yeah, it's worth learning. It's putting the effort into it. It's not easy, but it is worth doing. I personally find one of my favourite aspects of Train Sim World is driving German trains because of the signalling and the safety systems. That's specifically one of the key things that I enjoy in Train Sim World. Yes, the professor takes us back to school. Absolutely. I'm doing very well. Thank you, Richard Trainspotter. Right, okay, so please note, this is a somewhat simplified overview of PZB and German signalling. There's a lot more to it, but hopefully with this overview you can get going and stay going, more importantly. I'm only covering PZB passenger mode. There are 3 modes. And the only thing that varies is the speeds and the times you have to do things. But rather than saying this or this or this or this, I'm just going to give you PZB Modo, because that's as it relates to what we're looking at, which is primarily the Koln route, but also Hauptstrecke Rheinrohr, since those are the ones you've got in Train Sim Mod 2 right now. Real driver training takes an awful lot longer than the 1 to 2 hours we have today, so don't expect you to get the hang of it or understand it right away. Practice. German signalling and PZB is a bit of an alphabet soup. Just don't get bogged down on it. There's all sorts of people will throw all sorts of things at you. I'm going to throw all sorts of things at you. Have your own way of reflecting on what things are. What you call it is important, not necessarily how it's really referred to. You're not a real train driver. If you are a real train driver, you've already had your own instructions. The most important thing is to have the confidence to get started and to build your knowledge from there. Play. Make it go wrong. Break it. Start again and do another one. And don't be discouraged by other people saying, oh, it's really easy, I don't know why you don't get it. Because for people that don't know PZB and haven't gone through driver training or haven't had a long time playing with PZB, it is hard. But once you get the hang of it and you get what it's saying, then it won't be hard. You've got to get over that loop. Once you get over that hoop, it's just like, oh, that's what it means. Okay, fine, fair enough. But until then, it does look hard. So what are we covering today? We are covering signals, PZB, SIFA, AFB and LZB, the alphabet soup. Specifically, they relate to Koln and to some extent the Hauptstrecke Rheinrohr route. And if you didn't bring a pencil today, then you can see me afterwards, okay? I've given you plenty of warning. And make sure you've got your books open to the right page, okay? This is actually the panel where you turn it, where you turn them on. The buttons. If I get my glorious pointer here, this is SIFA, this is PZB, and this is LZB on the ICE3 train. So, the first thing I would say is before you worry about PZB or anything else, learn the signals. The signals tell you everything about what's going on. They're a speed-based system, so if you're in the UK, you're not used to a speed-based system, you're used to a route-based system, and the difference is clear as you learn how to use this. It'd be really obvious what the difference is. There's no route indicators on here, for example, and the speeds are telling you what the signals are telling you what speeds to go. You can drive a route, having never driven a route before in Germany, purely by doing what the signals tell you to do. It's really, really cool. There's tons of information on signals, and the more you understand the signals, PZB immediately starts to make more sense, because you'll understand that a signal is saying this. Oh, if it's telling me this, I need to acknowledge that, obviously. So you'll need to, and don't worry about the phrase acknowledge, we'll come to that in a minute. So learn the signals, and we're going to cover those first. And get used to what they're doing before you worry about things like PZB. There is more than one signalling system in Germany, but they basically all tell you the same thing. They just have different ways of doing it. We're going to focus on 2 systems, the HB system and the KS system. Koln uses the KS system. But don't worry, because they're basically just telling you the same thing. We'll cover off some examples of how they are, but basically they're all telling you the same thing. So don't worry about it. So, signals. The signal is trying to relay 2 bits of information to you primarily. What you've got to do now and what you need to do next, or what you should expect to do next. KS KS combine these into a single head or single set of lights, whereas the older HP signals have two different sets of lights on there. Hence KS, the K stands for combined, because it's the improvement on the older system which combines them together into one. These segments, this is all from Koln, and you can see this is all the smaller head versions of the KS signals. So what do KS signals look like, and what are they telling you? Now, I've used really simple words here to try and make this really straightforward. There are, as I've said before, this is a simplified version of what's going on in reality, but I've tried to make it simplified enough that you can still figure out what's going on without getting bogged down in a billion miles of detail. So, a single red light means stop. If you go past this light, what should you expect? Bad things. Simply put. This light is a green, you can go. If you go past this light, it means that you should expect to be able to go past the next signal in some form as well. If this light is flashing green, you can go past it, but you should expect the next signal to be slower than this one. This light is a yellow, which means you can go, but you should probably expect the next signal to be a red. Okay, so normally you're going to get greens, which means you can go past this one and you can go past the next one. This means you can go past this one, but slow down for the next one. And then this means go past this one and stop. So a lot of these signals are telling you you can go, except that one. That one's telling you stop or bad things. Okay. These are the older signals, the KS ones. Now you'll notice that these don't have any next information. This is telling you you can go. This is telling you go, but go slow. This is telling you stop. This is another way of saying go stop. This is actually not quite the same because it's got these two white lights on. This is actually telling you you've got shunting permission, so you can go slowly. So you'd see this in stationaries and things. But put it simple, it's go, go slow and stop. So we have a flashing green is double yellow. No, flashing green is just reduced speed. So flashing green might just be literally telling you to go a bit slower, and you'll get an indicator of what that is. The next green signal might well be a solid green. It could be another green. It could be anything. It's not telling you that. All it's saying is for this signal, you need to be expecting to reduce speed at the next signal, but you can proceed past this signal as normal. There is no. It's only actually a single. You get. Effectively, green, yellow, red is really all you get. You don't really get double because you've got speed control, for those of you that know what double yellow is in the UK. Yes, and as Red Leader says, slow. So in the case of this, go slow. That means proceed beyond this signal at 40 kilometers per hour, unless the signal tells you otherwise. Like I said, there's detail here, and I'm trying to simplify it down. When I say slow, read that as being 40 kilometers an hour. So this is the next information. You get a head which looks like this diagonal formation. And then in this instance, you can see that the next signal is, you get two yellows, the next signal is a stop. If you've got two greens, the next signal is a go. If you've got a green and a yellow, then your next signal is to reduce speed. So this is where the 40 kilometers. So what would happen is, this signal is a green yellow here, then the next signal would be a green yellow here. This is effectively how they're linking together. And then this one has this white light on the side there, which is not obvious, but unless you know it there. What this is telling you is that the next signal is closer than you would normally expect it to be. So if this was, for example, a double yellow with a white light on it, brake a bit harder than you'd normally brake. And in theory, you'd already know this because you should have learned the route in reality before you do this. So, but if you start seeing signals with these white lights on them, just be prepared to slow down a bit more than you normally would. Speed limits. So you can see here on this part, this is approaching Aachen. We've got a 7 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. So the white digit on the top means the speed limit applies now. A yellow digit on the bottom means a speed limit that applies next. Multiply these numbers by 10 to get the speed limit. So this signal is saying, from this signal, proceed at 70 kilometers an hour. Reduce the speed to 40 kilometers an hour by the next signal. And then the green signal is flashing in this instance, which I obviously can't capture in a picture. In fact, the first picture I took, the green light was out, and that just looked really wrong. So I took another picture with the green light on. But that signal is actually flashing, which is relating to the 4 underneath. So what that is saying, the flashing green is related to the 4 underneath and is saying reduce your speed to 40 kilometers an hour by the next signal which is actually just round the corner, which is why that white light is on. So practice signals and understanding signals without without doing any kind of PZB or SIFA or anything else. Try practice interpreting the signals. Say it out loud, or at least say it out loud in your head if you don't want to say it out loud proper. When you're approaching a signal, speak it. So what is it telling you to do now? What is it telling you to do next? Not every signal will tell you what to do next, but know that. So look at the signal and say, well, what is that telling me? That's telling me what to do. Pretty much every signal will tell you what to do now. Well, no, okay. Some tell you just what to do next. Some tell you just what to do now. Some tell you both. Figure it out and say it. Then you'll get the hang of it. And as you find you're getting more confident that you're getting, you think it seems like you're getting it right, you'll then be in a position to start turning PZB on. The other thing that's important to know is that this stuff, these speed limits, are not displayed on the HUD. So this warning for 40 may not be displayed on the HUD. Signal limits are not on the HUD. Can I say that one more time? Signal limits are not on the HUD. Only track limits are on the HUD. So what you should do is always make sure that you're following the limits on these signals and acting accordingly. PZB will expect you to act according to these signals. Okay? Right, that's signals. It's really, really a word whirlwind. Which limits are not on the HUD? Signal limits. Signal limits. Right, safety system. SIFA is the easiest one. SIFA is the easiest one. It's also the single most annoying thing on the planet. It's basically a driver vigilance system. Now, if you see this white light here, this SIFA, what happens is, every now and again, let's say every 30 seconds, this light will come on. And you then have 2.5 seconds. After that, an alarm will sound. You then have about 2.5 seconds, and then and then the brakes will come on. If you do nothing, what this is doing is trying to make sure, at a very, very most simple level, are you watching what you're doing? Are you awake? Are you able to press buttons on the cab, or are you incapacitated in some way? So, for example, in the real world, if a driver had fallen ill and was now unconscious in the cab, heaven forbid, then the SIFA light would come on, and within 5 seconds that train is coming to a stop, assuming something else hasn't already brought it to a stop. But if you're not paying attention because you're outside enjoying the scenery, for example, in Train Sim World, then you will have SIFA is basically DVD. It's the driver vigilance device in the UK, or the alerter in America. So what should you do to keep the train going? When the light goes on, press the acknowledge button, which is the circle on the controller, or B on the Xbox, or Q on the keyboard. If you miss it and it starts making an alarm, do the same. Press the button and it will acknowledge it and clear the alarm. If you still miss it and the brakes are now coming on, you can still press the button. And what will happen is the minute you acknowledge it, it releases all of the brakes, and the train will then be back under your control again to resume its speed. So for example, if you're in LZB with AFB running and you're blasting along at 250 kilometers an hour, and SIFA goes off, and you'll get sitting there staring out the window going, "Coo, speed," and you miss the fact that the alarm is going off, and the train starts screeching to a slow down. As soon as you press the SIFA button, it will release the brakes. Trucking on German trains on SIFA is not an emergency application. It is just a full service application. It's not a safety brake. It's not the same thing. PZB you can't release until the train has stopped. There are other cases where you can't, but SIFA you can. It will release the brakes when you acknowledge it. It's different. So the last thing I'll say on SIFA is, do not turn it on if you are learning other things. You will be driven up the wall. And what you'll do is you'll find yourself paying too much attention to SIFA and not on the other things before you have to pay attention. You'll be paying attention to SIFA and not on the other things. So put SIFA on when you're ready for that, but don't otherwise. Okay, because seriously, it's annoying. Okay, right. All the safety systems, Dallas Man, are automatically disabled. Everything I'm talking about today is off by default. If you want to use any of this stuff, you need to turn it on. After this, we're on slide 12 now, 23. I'll go in the game and we'll run the ICE3 and I'll talk you through everything in relation to what we've covered here. And the first thing I'll do is switch everything on and show you how to do it. And then if someone reminds me, I'll show you how to turn it all in the talent tool as well. So, PZB broadly aims to make sure the driver is following a simplified set of speed restrictions. That's the key thing. PZB does not know exactly what is going on the track. It's given these impulses, which I'll cover in a minute, and it's basing everything on that. It's up to you to follow what's going on, and if you follow what's going on, what you're instructed to do by the signals and the posts, then PZB will never bother you, particularly. Yeah, probably still bother you. PZB is just there to bother you. There are no in-cab alarms with PZB. So if you're used to UK safety systems where when you go over an AWS magnet, you get an alarm and you press a button and the alarm goes away and everyone is happy. PZB is not like that. PZB sits there and knows that you should be pressing a button about now. And you've got a couple of seconds to do that. And if you don't, then, well, that's your problem. And the train's coming to a stop. So there's no alarms in the cab to tell you've done something wrong. You need to know the right time to press the button, and then when you press the button, it rewards you by saying, yes, that was the right thing to do. It's basically, if you watch what you're doing. Oh, my webcam has reset. Hang on a second. Let me just go and mess with that. No, that screen has decided to go wrong. I love computers. I don't even know why it does this anymore, because I actually plugged it directly into the PC. It's not even in the hub anymore. I assume it's just the webcam being poor. Right, so PZB is based entirely on the signals and signs. It is not magic. If you see a signal that tells you to do stuff, then you should be acknowledging it. This is the habit you get into. No, you can't go to the restroom first, always. You should have gone before you came. Dear, oh dear. Put your mobile phones away as well, everybody, please. So you should already be, once you get to know how to use the, I have got a Logitech 920 Slim Gaming. I don't like it. It causes me nothing but trouble. That's exactly what this is. I lost my flow again. Yeah, so when you understand the signals and you understand what's going on outside of the train, then the PZB will be obvious. It won't be obvious. It will be much more clear. You'll be saying, if that is telling me to slow down, probably means I need to acknowledge it, for example. There's lights on the desk and the HUD telling you what PZB is doing. So you can see here that this is part of PZB here. This is telling me that PZB is on, and this 85 is part of PZB. You'll get used to these things as you go on. This is the different way of doing it. One of the confusing things you'll need to get used to is the Talent 2 and the IC3 use two different ways for displaying the PZB. Which is, just because, the German, it's the older and the newer systems. The Talent 2 has the newer system in this instance. The IC3 that we've got has the older system with the 6 lights. But I think that basically covers everything. PZB seems complicated when you first start, but once it clicks, it will get much easier. Bear with it. So how does PZB work in reality? So there's these magnets, which you can see here. These yellow magnets you'll see on the side of the track. You can even see on the plate what kind of magnet it is. When the train goes over these magnets, there's a pulse. There's either a 2000 hertz, 1000 hertz, or a 500 hertz hole. Pulse. You don't even need to worry too much about that level of detail. But what they do is they are what tell the train what the driver is expected to be doing. It's the moment you go over this magnet that you actually need to be doing the acknowledge. If this magnet is active, then you need to be acknowledging, essentially. 2000, what do they mean? A 2000 hertz will completely stop the train. You should never go over a 2000 hertz magnet except when a dispatcher gives you clearance to proceed past a red signal, and then there are procedures for doing that to disable the onboard monitoring of PZB via the override button. That generally will not be something you need to worry about. 2000 hertz is you ran a red light. Yeah, that's the same as in the UK. There's the red light protection grids. 1000 hertz is the one you will most often come across. These are the warnings for upcoming speed reductions. And 500 hertz is if you're approaching a red light, this is the final chance the train has to automatically stop you if you're not doing what you should be to approach that red light. Okay? we'll cover somehow that interfaces into the whole process as we go forward. So when you first start a train and start it moving, PZB goes into something called a start program, which is a flashing indicator. It's there flashing 75, 85, which you will have seen, hopefully. That means that you are limited to 45 kilometers an hour. And in fact, when in any kind of restriction that I talk about, knock off 5 kilometers an hour. PZB is utterly unforgiving. If you go 45.1 kilometers per hour, the brakes are coming on. So please only I would suggest you do 5 kilometers below. Certainly on the start program, my understanding is this is fairly standard practice amongst drivers as well. If I say the limit is technically 45 kilometers an hour, stay at 40 kilometers per hour. Now there is a process which I know some people have misunderstood, where you can release from start program or release from monitoring. When you first get going, or when you see the flashing, people then press the end and think they can carry on going. The problem is there are rules for releasing. If you're not clear on the rules for releasing, I wouldn't. It's the safest option. The rules for releasing are essentially, if there's another 500 hertz magnet within some hundreds of meters of distance, you should not be releasing. Otherwise, the minute you go over that magnet, the brake's coming on. So if you have a clear line ahead of you for more than, I think it's like 700 meters, then you can release. If you don't have a clear line ahead of you, do not release. If you're not sure, do not release and stay at 40 kilometers an hour. At a certain distance, it will promote itself out automatically, and as soon as you see the lights go steady, you can then speed up. I'll show you this stuff when we get in the game. When do you acknowledge PZB? So there's no alarm. So when you pass a signal or a post, you then essentially, like a speed reduction or something like that, you might need to do a reduction, an acknowledgement. So it depends on what it is that you go past and what it's telling you to do. Essentially, if anything on a signal is yellow, you probably need to acknowledge. If anything is telling you to slow down, it probably needs acknowledging. There are no penalties for acknowledging unnecessarily. You can just sit there smashing the page down key as much as you like, and other than annoying the heck out of you with it beeping and so forth, it won't have any impact on the train. So if you're not sure, press page down. Well, technically adverse distance signals are kind of telling you to slow down, Jonathan, but yes, single yellows, double yellows on PHP system, anything like that, they're all telling you to slow down. So you always need to be acknowledging that stuff. If you are not sure, acknowledge. Okay, you'll get used to, in that process, what you need to do, what happened, which ones you didn't need to acknowledge. Because if you go past the signal, press page down or the B or circle key on the controllers, and nothing happens, you didn't need to acknowledge it. If when you do it, the 1000 hertz comes up, then you did need to acknowledge it. And then you'll know for what you need to do. No, PZB does not enable itself, Nicole still plays. You need to enable PZB the same as SIFA and LZB. So it sits there watching what's going on, and when you go over one of these magnets, you then press the acknowledge button to then just answer that essentially. So it's the B button, the circle button, or the page down key on the keyboard to acknowledge. Right, as part of acknowledging, so unlike in systems like AWS in the UK, when you acknowledge AWS in the UK, it means nothing other than the driver has a mental note now. It's like a post-it note on the dash saying, by the way, don't forget that you've got potentially a red light ahead of you. PZB is a little bit more proactive than that, well, a heck of a lot more proactive than that. So, and again, I'm only talking about PZB mode O, the passenger type. NSA, PZB is flashing 1785. What does that mean? So if you've just started moving, you're in a thing called start program. If it's appeared during the course of moving, then you're a thing called restricted monitoring. Effectively the rules are basically the same. It's just slightly different naming. And that just means that you're limited to 40 kilometers an hour. Right, so when you acknowledge something, if the 1000 hertz lights up, then you have to take some sort of action. And ideally, once you get more practiced at this, you'll already be taking that action. You'll already see a signal coming up that you know you need to acknowledge and be slowing down. So in this example here, that yellow there, I would need, if I was approaching this signal, I'd already know that I'd need to be slowing down. So I would be putting the brakes on, and then as I go over the signal, pressing the page down button to do the acknowledge. That becomes a bit more experience and practice. Once you get the 1000 hertz light come up, you need to reduce to 85 kilometers per hour. It's lower for freight, but we won't talk about freight, within 23 seconds, which is plenty of time. It doesn't require emergency full service braking or anything like that, but it needs firm braking. We're going to cover LZB to PZB. Nicole still plays. So you should be reacting as far ahead as you can see these signals, but 23 seconds is plenty of time. But that's all that PZB is tracking. If the signal is actually, let's say for example, that signal before that said a 4 that we had up there, PZB wouldn't check to make sure I was going at 40 kilometers an hour at any point. It only checks to make sure I've gone below 85 kilometers an hour. That is the contract you have with PZB, is you must drop to 85 kilometers per hour. There's lots of people pointing out lots of specifics. PZB must only be pressed if the expecting speed limit is 90 kilometers an hour or lower, for example, by Mori there. Like I said, this is a simplified overview of PZB, hence why I'm saying mash the PZB acknowledge button as much as you want and learn where it should be. There are lots of specifics, and if I go into all of those, then the newcomers will just completely get lost with what they're doing. So what if the speed shows higher, says Jonathan? So you still have to obey the 45 kilometre an hour drop. So if you're doing 120 kilometres an hour and a signal comes up for a 9, I don't know, I'm making up bad examples, then when you slow down, you still need to drop down to 85 kilometres an hour and wait for the 1000 hertz light to switch off, and then you can speed back up again. To the example, you don't see too many examples of that in Hauptstrecke and Koln, but I mean Spessartbahn does have examples. Particularly, it mostly happens with freight trains where your speeds are lower than that, so you wouldn't be slowing down to 85. You might be slowing down to 55 kilometers an hour. So that's a better example actually. Let's say that the speed limit is dropped to 70 kilometers an hour, which you would have to acknowledge that. You're doing 100 kilometers an hour at the time. You acknowledge it, drop to 55 kilometers an hour, that's one of the slow speed freights limit, the equivalent to 85 here, and then you'd speed back up to 70 once you've cleared the 1000 hertz. But for passenger trains, I'm trying to keep this as straightforward as I can by picking the path you're going to all follow here on these two routes. It's drop to 85 kilometers an hour within the 23 seconds is what you need to do. So take a specific example. When you're approaching a red signal, the first thing you're going to get potentially is a go slow. So you need to acknowledge it and then slow to 85 kilometers an hour and slow down to whatever it tells you to slow down to. You're likely to then get a go stop, so like a yellow signal or a double yellow in the older types. Acknowledge it. And then you need to slow down to 65 kilometers an hour. The reason for that is because if you're approaching a red light, you're expecting a hot 500 hertz magnet in front of you. That hot 500 hertz magnet will be, if the train receives a hot 500 hertz signal, then it wants to make sure you're going slow enough to stop for a red light. So that's why it checks 65 kilometers an hour. Again, that speed is different for freight trains. It's slower because they can't stop as fast. Once you've gone past that 500 hertz magnet, the 500 light kicks in on the dash. You then need to slow down to 45 kilometers an hour and stop. Now, if one thing that trips people up a lot is if you are slowing down, so you get down to 65, and while you're slowing down, the light clicks up into, say, a green or a yellow aspect. It's not red anymore. And people think, I can speed up because it's not red anymore. No, you can't. While 500 hertz is on, you need to get down to 45 kilometers per hour. Hold there and wait for the 500 hertz light to go out, and then you can start speeding back up again. But then you'll still potentially be on other restrictions, so keep an eye on what's going on. What are the 500,000 hertz lights on dash you speak of? They're these ones over here, actually. Well, have I done another shot closer up of them? Here. So this is the 500 hertz light, this is the 1000 hertz light, and then restricted monitoring and start program are these two lights flashing alternately, essentially. So these 6 lights here are the PZB light cluster. Right, that's PZB. We'll cover more of that in the practical in a minute, when we actually get in the game. Again, there's detail on releasing Jonathan, but that's going to confuse people, and they get it wrong. One of the things people get wrong mostly is releasing when they shouldn't. So I generally don't even tell people about releasing and let them learn that for themselves later on, because in general, like I said, they get it wrong, and all it does is mean that the train goes wrong, it stops, and they don't know why. So LZB. It's used for high-speed rail as it can see a lot further ahead than the driver. So you can see, some of these signals up ahead, but LZB needs to be able to see significantly further than that. For example, I think it sees 14 kilometres ahead, which is significantly further than the driver can see, even on a good day, because not only that, the train can see round corners and things. Not only that, David, we're actually going to guess the result that you gave at the end of it, and we'll give you the guessed result and what we think that you can, what you think you would have got at the end as well. So LZB can be used in conjunction with AFB in order to allow the train to operate the speed directly, or if you don't have AFB turned on, you can operate the speed directly. You do it however you want. You don't have to use AFB, but most people, if you want to do it the way the real drivers do, they generally would, as far as I understand it. Right. So LZB, how do you turn it on? So there's a switch in the compartment, as I described at the beginning, and once that is in, there's then a B indicator, and I'll show you the indicators in a minute, which is lit, and it's on the HUD, telling you that LZB is ready, it's active, it's primed, and will be active at some point. When you pass one of these LZB signs, then LZB enables, it switches on, it goes active. And I was going to put a U with 2 dots in there, and I forgot to go and do that. So this is a U with 2 dots indicator. Again, I'll show you that in a minute. If you're not using AFB, just keep your speed below the red target marker on the speedometer, and that's all we really need to do. So how do you drive with it? So once LZB is running, if there are any reductions in speed up ahead, this bar graph in the middle will tell you how far away it is oh, my camera's in the way of the sign. Oh, that's genius. That's genius. Let me whoop. There you go. That's the LZB sign there. Sorry about that. So when LZB is running, if there are any reductions in speed up ahead, this bar graph here and this number here, they match the same, they're telling you the same information, are going to tell you how far it is, and that's in meters. So in this instance, that's saying 9,900 meters. The bar graph only goes down once this number gets to 4,000, so 4 kilometers. The speedometer tells you what that limit is. And this red target mark here tells you what your LZB target speed is. That's also on the HUD as a blue marker. LZB can detect a red signal long before the HUD. Yes, it can. LZB in the game has much further look ahead than the HUD does. So there's this G indicator down here that will light up if you need to slow down, and if it starts flashing, slow down more. You're about to get emergency braked because you're ahead of the speed curve. You're behind the deceleration curve. So what this is telling me is that my current speed limit is 250 kilometers an hour. I'm currently doing about 205, 210 kilometers an hour, but somewhere beyond 9.9 kilometers away, there is a drop to 160. LZB or AFB target speed. But if you're using, if you're not using AFB, then it wouldn't be on here at all, and it would just be the LZB that shows up on here. If you activate AFB, I can't remember how that actually renders on here separately to the LZB target speed. But this red indicator here is the target speed for LZB. And all this information is on the HUD as well, in a nice and clear form. So, a couple of you have asked, but how do you finish LZB? Can you use LZB without PZB? Yes, you can. All of the systems are independently operable. In reality, no, but in the game, yes. Right. So when you're approaching the end of an LZB section, so if you're heading westbound and you're you just get through Duren, LZB section about to end. So what will happen there is the end light starts blinking. See, blinking. See, that's my hand is showing here, blinking. When that happens, you need to press the PZB free button from the keyboard. It's the end button from the console. You just have to go and manually operate the real switch in the cab. And then once you do that, the end light goes steady. This is steady. Yeah. This is blinking. This is steady. And that will then remind you that LZB is coming to an end. But LZB is still in control at that point. It hasn't actually ended yet. It's warning you it's coming to an end. If you do not press PZB free within a certain time, I can't remember what it is, then the train will just come to an end on its own and stop. So once the LZB end light goes out, LZB is now fully back into the ready state, not taking control of your train, and you're good. If you had PZB enabled, then it would drop back to PZB instead of LZB. Your PZB intervenes out the blue. Record a video of that happening and report it to support. Train spotter. It shouldn't be happening. Is it 10 seconds, lock B? I couldn't remember the number exactly. Where is PZB free? Where's the PZB? I did a picture of the yeah, here's the PZB controls here. This middle one is PZB free. This one, the Waxum, is PZB acknowledged. This is PZB free. This is page down. This is the end button. This is the del key on the keyboard. This one is for this is the override, and this one is for going through red signals basically, but doesn't always work. You need to have permission to go through that red signal before this will work. And there's other rules as well, so we're not going to go into that. And lastly, oh no, not lastly, we've got FB to do next, that won't take long, is the dials on the, this is on the ICE3. So LZB enabled is this one, the B indicator. When LZB is active, you get the U indicator. When LZB is about to finish, this is what flashes and then goes steady once you acknowledge it. And then G is the thing that tells you need to be slowing down. Okay, those are the ones that are relevant for that. And then these 6 are the PZB indicators. Okay. AFB is dead easy. So it's easiest to enable the AFB while it's stationary. But you can enable it while it's mobile. I'm only going to tell you how to enable it while it's stationary. I can demonstrate to you another time how you do it while it's moving. But what you do is you go into the 9 button here for AFB, get this screen up and click 6 for Visual Freigabe, which will then enable AFB. You then set the AFB lever, which is this one, the left-hand lever. This is the throttle lever. This is the AFB lever. You set that to the target speed, and you apply the throttle, and off you go. And once you enable LZB, you can just push the AFB lever full forward, because then that gives the train maximum range to do whatever it wants to, essentially. AFB sets your speed limit, essentially. You're still in control of the train. That's one other thing that's really important to worry about, or to remember, is that AFB is not your excuse to have a nap. You are still in control of that train, and there may be certain circumstances whereby you need to apply extra braking or take AFB out of the equation and apply it and drive yourself. But AFB, for the most part, does a fairly good job of what's going on. These options here are for set speeds at like shunting limits or going through certain low speeds, because 2 and 5 are very difficult to set even in reality. Whereas then these are common limits for moving around things, so they just have them set there, so you can just pick it and then that is what it'll actively apply. Can you run LZB without PZB and with SIFA? Yes, you can turn the safety systems on or off in any combination that you like. Right. Should we drive some trains? I think I've bored everyone to tears sufficiently now. Let me switch over to the pause screen for just a minute while I get the game booted up and tell PowerPoint to shut up. I'll try and make what I'll try and do is get this PowerPoint over to the creative team and get them to make it less bad, and then we can try and make it available so that you can review it on your own time. Right. I think we've got the game. Hopefully we've even got audio. We've got audio. Excellent. Right. Schnellfahrstrecke Koln. Let's go explore. Timetable. Put a bit of cloud in the sky. ICE3. We're going to do a westbound run. And we're going to go to Brussels. So let's do IC16. If there's anything that you think should be changed in what I've covered going forward, let me know, because this is a first cut of really trying to understand how we teach these kinds of complex safety systems. So think about this as a prototype for trying to do something better in-game, in YouTube and so forth. What I kind of want to know is, does the style work? Was there too much detail? Was there too much waffle? In which case, point to the waffle that you shouldn't have been there. I think descriptions of flashing lights versus stable lights probably is spot on and needs to stay there. However, this is what I want to understand, is trying to understand, how do we teach you? Do you understand? Are you better? Does it encourage you to have a go? And if you do, I'd love to know that. Right, so we are in the cab. Let me go and turn on the safety systems before we do anything else. They're down here in the IC3. Open the cab. That one is LZB, that one is PZB, and that one is SIFA. If you look down, the titles on the web will tell you which one is which. I'm turning them all on. You don't have to. Right, let's take the cab, put it in forward, and we'll open the door. Right, so on the HUD you can see, and I'm going to use the HUD because in the daylight these are a little bit harder to read, but you can see the B indicator is on, telling me that LZB is primed. It's ready to be used. 85 tells me that we're in PZB at the moment, and we're in a PZB-O train, as in we're a passenger train. This train can't be anything but a PZB-O train. Freight trains, you can choose which one you have. So once the passenger train is finished loading, we'll get going. And the first thing you'll see once we get going is that the 85 will start blinking. And actually in the right lights, you'll see these two lights start flashing backwards and forwards. And that's what I'm talking about with the... why is the B not active in the cab? I don't know, actually. I noticed that earlier on, so that'd be a bug. So, yes, you press the... you can either release it if you think it'll work. Oh, hang on, the audio's not even turned on. Hopefully you heard that. Oh, AFB, of course, yes. So, number 9, number 6... AFB is now on. You'll see the blue bar just appeared here. And the first thing you should do is set it to 40 kilometers an hour. Because that way, because you're in start program by default, if you set AFB to 40 kilometers an hour, then then you won't exceed the start program or restricted monitoring speed accidentally. The number of times I've been driving a train, certainly in the early days when I'm learning PZB, the biggest failure I would make was to constantly exceed the start program speed. AFB stops you from being able to do that, even if you're overjoyed at the fact the train is now moving and forget to actually look at what you're doing. Start program is limited to 45 kilometers an hour, but as I understand from many German drivers, best practice is to go 5 kilometers an hour under the limit, so that you have a little bit of wiggle room and leeway. Also allowing, because sometimes there's actually error in reality, there's errors in calculation, which means that if you're doing 44.5, it might still read it as 45.2, in which case it would stop the train. So the advice I've always heard is to drive 5 kilometers below the speed limit. Right, so we're now running, and you can see immediately that the restricted monitoring has kicked in, the start program, and similarly this is now flashing in the HUD. So I can either leave it like this, in which case I'm going to stay at 40 kilometers an hour, and the speed limit is 40 anyway. That's the other thing. If releasing it isn't going to give you any extra speed, why not? Why worry about it? Just leave it. So if we get a bump in speed in a minute, we can have a look. Right, the yellow indicator here is SIFA, and you heard it say shouting SIFA. So keep an eye on the white light here. When the white light turns on, you get 2.5 seconds, then it starts saying SIFA, SIFA. Press, and if you don't, again the brakes come on. We'll do some of that as well. So we're still limited to 40s. There is absolutely no value in releasing monitoring, so I'm just going to leave it there. Oh, apparently 5 kilometers below PZB speed is actually mandatory. There you go. It does make sense. It makes so much more sense. PZB sound, in-game sound is low, is it? Right. So if I don't acknowledge the alarm, you get a brake. As soon as I press Q, the brakes release, and the train will then speed up. Because we're on AFB, it will do that bit automatically. Right, is that better on the audio of the game? I think I had to turn it down the other day because it was too loud and Sam couldn't talk over it. Right, so we're going up against a green with a green, so this is a go with an expect go. So this is all the go. Right, so we've come out of the restricted now, the start program, and our speed limit has gone up. So I'm going to bump the speed limit, the AFB speed up a little bit. Yeah, it's a bit loud now, is it? Right, I'll go a little bit between the two. Is that better? Right, so what have we got coming up? So these signals here are telling you about speed restrictions. That's telling you 70 kilometres. Do you see the magnets on the ground? There's none that apply to us because we're not nothing coming up ahead. Right, speed limit has now gone up. So I'm going to bump the speed again. Right, this is, again, expect a green. So we're all clear and clean and green. There's the magnet for that signal. If that signal was doing something else, then we would have had to acknowledge right there. But it isn't, so we're good. We'll get more PZB action on the other end of this route, particularly as we come into Aachen. Okay, let me move my camera down. Oh, no, that's the game. Move the camera down. And the background. Right, can you see what's going on now? Right, LZB, sorry, is just enabled. So the bar graph has lit up. The U has now come on. And at this point, I can just put AFB to maximum. Put throttle to maximum. Now you notice nothing happened because the train is in control of the speed now. So if I now, so I'm a SIFA machine now at this point. So we're proceeding along. So you can see examples of this is a stop signal over here. Again, this is a go. There's lots of go signals. The signals are more interesting once we get past LZB. So LZB has just bumped our speed up to 140, so we're going to speed up. There's only possibility to switch the HUD off. You can only switch. What is it you want to do that you don't get via pressing F1, Sebastian? That is how you turn the HUD off. Or on the console, you press and hold the options button or the menu button on the Xbox. Right, so we're speeding up now, and there's not an awful lot to do at this point, so I'll talk over any signals that look like they're doing something interesting. But for the most part, what are the white lights? So white lights mean one of two different things, and I can't remember how you determine which one is which. One of them is, I think in the case of KS signals, you only see one type, and that is this signal is warning you about something happening closer than normal. Yeah? Whereas without the white light there is a minimum of something like 1 kilometre between a warning and when it happens. The white light means it's less than 1 kilometre. It should still be perfectly doable by the train, but if you see the white light, expect the next signal to be closer. On the HP signals it can also mean that this is just a distant signal, or sorry, a repeater signal. This is not actually a signal you would acknowledge, it's just a repeater, giving you a reminder of what's going up ahead. If you treat every white light as a warning that the signal that you're coming up against is closer than it should be, you won't go wrong. You'll be more cautious, and there's nothing more being more cautious. Signals are on the right-hand side, Lord Castellan, yes. If they are on the left-hand side, there is normally a post on the right-hand side where the signal would be. I think it's like a checkerboard, and then you should look on, and that's what tells you to look on the other side. So by default, you should be looking on the right. While you're in LZB, PZB is turned off. You don't have anything to do with LZB, so the LZB is in control of every aspect of what's going on. So you should not worry about, for example, if there was a signal that came up that normally if it was under PZB you'd be acknowledging. You don't need to worry about it. While the U indicator is lit, LZB is driving this train. On the KF system, white light above the coloured light is reduced distance. White light below the coloured light means it's a repeater. There you go. Nicole, LZB does the driving for you. Using AFB, yes, as I've shown you as we go up this way for this, we're driving with LZB. So I'm not increasing the speed here, it's doing it itself. Acknowledge signals, not magnets. Indeed, Mick. In fact, you acknowledge more than signals. You acknowledge posts as well. Because sometimes you'll get an NE2 board on its own, like the one black or white board with like a cross on it. Well, it's two triangles in reality, but it looks like a cross. There are many posts that you should acknowledge as well. So you're acknowledging signals and posts, not magnets. Why is now 160 kilometres in the speed restriction window? I'm assuming that means it can see 160 kilometre restriction 10 kilometres, more than 10 kilometres away. He works Brussels MIDI, does he, Chuck? Oh, very good. Oh no, I appreciate you do, Mick Chicken. I'm sure you do. It was more clarification for others. How can you tell if you need PZB U or M? If you're driving any kind of freight train, then it's U or M. If your freight train, and what I would generally do, because the game doesn't tell you which one you should do, I would try braking. I would run that scenario or service once, get it up to some speed and see how well it brakes. If it's really slow to brake, then I'll go PZB U. If it seems to brake quite rapidly, then I'll go with PZB M. If you're unsure, go with PZB U. On main spec at Barn, all of the freight services are set up for PZB-U because they're all pretty much running at the freight limit tolerances. And in fact, they're all running in what they call goods mode braking, which means they're actually further limited from PZB mode U down to a 90 kilometers an hour speed limit. Right, so we've got a little bit before anything interesting happens on the signalling. Let's have a quick look out and see what we can see. Look at. This is that NE2 board I was telling you about. It tells you that this is a distant signal. These are countdown boards. These tell you, like this is 3, 2, 1, and then something happens. That's basically 3, 2, 1 is a countdown to a thing happening. Same as you're trying to hit no nudge as soon as it's out of you, basically. Yeah. As soon as it crosses the window, press the page down button, and generally if I don't get a response, I'll press it one more time, just in case I was too early. Again, there's no penalty for acknowledging unnecessarily, so you can acknowledge as much as you like. Do you have to press the button perfectly? Do you have to miss a second leeway inside the magnet? So once the magnet is received, is detected, I think there's then something like a 1 or 2 second timer. So from the minute the magnet goes under the train, which is why you can be early. If you're early, it won't respond. So when it goes under the train, then the timer starts, and then you have 1 or 2 seconds to acknowledge the magnet. The free cam is on key 8, so that's now. Another green signal coming up here. I understand some so holding down the acknowledge key, I've seen different. I've heard 2 different trains of thought on that. One of them being that as you go through the signal, you hold the acknowledge key down, and then you release it as you go once you're past it. And other people have told me that you don't do that, you wait till you've gone past it and then you acknowledge it. I think both should work. It's one of those, I think the different, either driving practice has changed or different drivers just have their own style. I tried to work out from talking to different people if there was actually a consensus, but there didn't seem to be a consensus, so it actually doesn't matter a great deal. Right, so LZB is starting to wake up now. So 5.7 kilometres, right, 5.6. There is a 200 km/h speed restriction. So this is actually as we're approaching Durham. We get the 260 and then the 160. That voice there is SIFA. It's 4-second timer as it calls things. Okay, you get more time than I thought. How often have I been to Germany? Half a dozen times. So a couple of times for Gamescom, a couple of times for Star Trek conventions in Bonn. Yes. Right, so the G light is lit up, and that's because now the train has started prepping we're starting to hit the speed curve now for bringing the speed down. So any second now, you'll see that there you go, it's already started applying the brakes, and the red target meter's coming down, and the speed is coming down. So you can see that we are slowing down. It'll catch up ahead, get ahead of the curve in a minute, which is very slightly behind it. So we're now slowing down. The train will automatically bring us down to 200. In-game sound is a bit loud, is it? Okay. Right. So we're slowing down to 200 kilometres. You can see now that the numbers have gone off, and we're down under 500 metres, 250 metres, 100 metres. We're down to the 200. We've stopped decelerating. That's it. We've now reached that. Well, now what's happened is that we've got another warning of 160 kilometres and about 3.5 kilometres. So we're going to be slowing down further. Yes, if you switch off AFB, or if you're not using AFB, then all of the train is driven by you. You must slow down. G means you need to slow down, yeah. It's a little bit... I think it's like a decimal point that's being misread there, essentially. How do you recover if you fail to act? So if you fail to deal with the PZB, once the train has stopped, then put your throttle all the way back to off, all the way as far down as you can get it, and then you need to do a PZB release and a PZB acknowledge. The alarms will clear, and then you can reset the brakes and go. Right, so now we're down to 160. Any minute now, PZB end, the LZB end, sorry, the LZB end is going to show up. So watch out for the light turning up. Yes, it only tells you about lower speed restrictions. There it goes, end has just appeared. So at this point, you operate that, and that has now gone to solid. At this point, we're now cool for coming out of LZB. We won't get any problems. But AFB will stop working. So I need to disable it. So if I do AFB else here, and then clear that, because what happens is that because you've been, as a driver, you have been operating of course I left the throttle off, didn't I? You've been operating with AFB, and now that the train is not holding the AFB speed limit back, I've got it set to 330 kilometers an hour. So what it does is it switches off the AFB so that it doesn't accidentally start roaring off. Now that beep told us we're now back out of LZB, the 85 tells us we're back in PZB, and the B tells me that LZB is once again prepped and ready to go. So if we were to hit another LZB section, the train is saying I'm ready for it. But as of now, we're now in PZB control, which means now we need to probably pay a little bit more attention than we have been. So I'm going to speed back up, and what we can do now is re-enable AFB. So I'll show you the rolling procedure for starting AFB. Throttle off, AFB to maximum, and then VSOL Freigabe. AFB is now on. If you now roll it down to where you want it to be, which is the speed limit, and put the power on, you'll know AFB will now activate and you'll be off to go. The reason for that is, if you just enable AFB with it at the minimum position, the brakes would come slamming to a halt. Whereas by putting it to maximum, the train will do nothing, essentially, because you've got no power on. Why does it say AFB 3 times? I think it's a warning that it's just an audible warning that you've enabled AFB. Since it's effectively going to have an impact on how the train drives, it definitely should make sure the driver has heard that and be aware of it. So there's nothing coming up at the minute. We're just doing SIFA acknowledgement when the light comes on. We've got a signal coming up in 1.2 kilometres. This is the distant for it. That's the NE2 board. So that's telling us that the signal's good. Signal's coming up. It's a green signal. So there's nothing we need to worry about. I mean, what basically is going to happen now is we've got a couple of speed restrictions coming up that we don't have any PZB to deal with because they stay over about 80-90 kilometres an hour. But then once we approach Aachen, we then get slowed down and down and down and down. And so you'll see the speed indicators telling you speed at this signal, speed at next signal. You'll see PZB needing to be dealt with and all sorts of things. So once you get closer to Aachen, we're doing a lot more with PZB. Big computer on a track, yeah. It's a big computer on a track, but then it's because you're driving a train very quickly. And unlike a car, a bus or a plane, if something's in the way, you cannot get out of the way. So you need to know it's in the way and stop beforehand. And that's what all these safety systems are all about. Acknowledging C to sneeze, yeah. Sneeze far. Sneeze far. Sneeze far. 17 kilometres to Aachen. How can you turn the SIFA warnings on? If you watch from the beginning of the stream, ITNOR, there is I go through all of the stuff and also how you turn it all on. Spoiler alert, there's a cupboard behind this chair that you use to turn all the safety systems on. Arison's great you to practice PZB on, says Train Guy. Yes, once that comes to TSW2 anyway, it shouldn't be hopefully too long. Particularly the little train that goes to Letmath, the Iserlohner, because it's a short run, but you get speed decelerations as you come to Letmath, so it's quite an interesting run with a bit of condensed PZB activity. Is that your cat allergy playing up? No, the cat hasn't been in here. Right, so we've got a speed restriction coming up to 120, so I'm just going to go ahead and drop the speed restriction, the AFB down to 120. R and F keys, by the way, we'll do that on the keyboard. So the train's now slowing down. You can help it, you can bring in brakes if you want to slow it down a bit faster. Right, so we're in the 120 now. We've got a further drop coming up to 110. Why the big pink cursor? Because I've got 4 monitors and I keep losing my mouse cursor. So I've decided I would make it big and easy to see. And you know what? Works too. Drop the speed down to 110. We're ahead of schedule, so we're all right. Oh, I lost my cursor sense. No, Nicole, it's been perfect.
SIFA.
So this is telling us we've got nothing to worry about on the signals. This is a green signal, although the next signal is close. But it's green, so it doesn't matter. In fact, there is the signal right there. We're down to the 110, so we're good for the limit. You have to shake your mouse to enlarge your cursor. Yeah, I saw an add-on that did that for Windows, but now I quite like my mouse just being big and pink. Some people prefer the destination marker tomato, some people don't. Now that the distance is in the top left all the time, it's very much a personal choice. Right, in a minute we'll get sped up to 140. I'm trying to keep an eye out for a post that needs acknowledging otherwise. This one doesn't need acknowledging, but this kind of post here, the upside down triangle, if that adds like a something with an 8 or below on it, then you'd need to acknowledge one of those as well. Is that what you want to do, Wouty boy? Right, put the speed back up to 140. Put the throttle back up to full. How do you turn on AFB on the ICE, Steam Trains Unlimited? If you go back to the beginning of the video, I can't get out of the cab to show you, the seat to show you without it going upset me. There's a panel behind here. But I did show you how to turn it on earlier in the video. So next signal is green. Green with a double green, in fact. Which is fine. Dear, oh dear. This is a little bit of HP signal. No, it is colours. Right, upcoming 120. So this is the point where we're now slowing down for Arkham. Option to change the destination sign. Yeah, it's press the UD button. And again. And then we switch to... press the E key, sorry. Then use the right and the left key to say what you're doing. So we're going to Brussels. Press the button and the actions. So that'll now say Brussels on the destinations. Why don't you go to third person view? You find the best bit is looking outside the train. So, if you're someone who likes driving on the outside of the train, I recommend you do not turn safety systems on, because you won't be paying enough attention to what's going on ahead of you. What I find is that when I'm driving with all the safety systems on, I'm quite busy in the cab, particularly on, like I said, with some of these routes, just keeping an eye on what's going on. You cannot afford to miss a single signal post or or other post on the trackside. Or you risk bringing the train to a stop. Right, so this is a flashing green with a 12, so this is our warning to drop to 12, 120. I'm going to set it to 110 for the lols. So as we come up here, we can see we're only at 207 kilometres away. This signal is telling me 120 at this signal, 100 at the next signal. So I'm going to drop speed again. By the way, if you apply the brakes while the throttle is on, notice that this has gone red. Throttle is now interlocked out. It won't do anything. You clear it by releasing it to 0 and reapplying it again. So this is 10 with 4 coming up. So at this point, PZB is hot. So I press the page down and acknowledge. 1000 hertz came up. I now need to get down to 85 kilometers an hour within 23 seconds, which is easy, and then 40 kilometers an hour by the signal, which is easy. R and F to update your PZB by a keyboard. Yes, sorry, update your AFB by a keyboard. It's a lot to digest, Ali, but it's one of those things that once you get the hang of it, it starts to become second nature. It starts to become much easier. That you won't believe me, and I didn't believe me when people told me that either. I thought they were completely off their rocker, and no normal human being could ever understand this system. But actually, it turns out to be rather easy once you get the hang of it. But it is a tough uphill run until you get the hang of it. Hopefully this has given you a have a look, the ability to have a play with it. So this is 4 with the next speed of 4. You must acknowledge this. And notice again 1000 hertz comes up. Now again, we're now told to just drop our speed to 85 kilometers an hour within 23 seconds. But since we're already going below 85 kilometers an hour, it's not really a problem. The key thing to do when you're driving with PZB is to make sure you're paying attention. Because if you're not, you will run into problems. So again, with the 4, they need to be acknowledged, it's fine. Now this one up here is a yellow. And the white light tells me again it's too close. It's a close signal. And that one needs acknowledging as well. So again, as we come up past it, what you'll do in this instance, because the 1000 hertz light is still on, you'll see the light go off and then come back on again, meaning that it has acknowledged that 1000 hertz. 4 means 40 at this particular moment. Acknowledged, the 1000 hertz went off and back on again. Again, we're now we're under 85 kilometers an hour, so we're all good. If you ever forget the speed, by the way, there they are here. These are the 3 speeds for the different modes. 85 is flashing because I should be doing no faster than 85. Flashing green signal means reduced speed, or expect reduced speed. Oh, it makes AWS look like a flashing light. It's much more complicated than AWS. What's the hertz light supposed to mean? So they're telling you what kind of magnet you've actually gone under, you've gone over. The key one to worry about really is 1000 hertz, 500 hertz. So here you go, look, we're approaching a red light and we went over the 500 hertz. And that's just what the train is, it's gone over the 500 hertz because there's a red light 200 meters away. And that's basically the last chance that the train has to stop itself if you are not paying attention. In theory, so if you follow the approach to a red light, the worst case scenario, the worst notice you'd have is you'd have that yellow light coming up, and you could be approaching that yellow light at 160 kilometers an hour. If you did that, then on hitting the yellow light, you would be you would then have to get to 85 kilometers an hour within 23 seconds, or all the brakes come on, and you can't release from that. They're on emergency essentially to stop the train. Once you've got down to 85 kilometers an hour, the next thing you're going to hit is a 500 hertz magnet. If you hit that at more than 65 kilometers an hour, all the brakes are coming on. If you've got it down to 65 kilometers an hour, but you're not paying attention, you don't slow down anymore, then shortly after the 500 hertz, because you've not dropped it down to 45 kilometers an hour, all the brakes come on. So basically these are 2 points at which the train is protecting the network from you running past that red light, if that makes sense. A lot of this is down to doing it yourself and learning. What I hope I've done is tried to demystify what's actually going on here. I will do a quick bit on the Talent 2. We're not going to do a full run on the Talent 2, but because it's different to the way that it's displayed. It's the same information, but because it's displayed differently, I just want to show how, just so you can relate that in your head, in case you prefer the Talent 2 to drive. You can still learn PZB with it. You do not have to acknowledge 500 hertz. No, Lord Castellan, sorry, I should have said that. 500 hertz does not need... Only 1000 hertz signals need acknowledging. So the 500 hertz signals are not on any kind of a post or signal. And the rule is you acknowledge signals and posts. So there's nothing to acknowledge there. You're either doing the right speed or you're not. If you're not doing the right speed, the brakes will come on automatically. If you are doing the right speed, happy days. Can I repeat the part of the stream where I said all the stuff? No, Crucible. Right, lock the doors. We're not done yet, Jonathan. We're going to have a quick look at the Talent 2. Well, what we'll do is we'll go return to free roam. So just for those that came in late, this is where you turn on AFB and SIFA and PZB. And any combination you want. You don't. Then none of them rely on any of the others. You can put them in yourself. Okay, right. That's that. Let me go back to the menu and bring up the Talent 2. Talent 2. It's a cloud. Clouds have to happen. Oh, that's the wrong colour. Switch and have one that isn't my disaster, but actually it's just a blank one and just click create, and we'll going the other way. Let's do 1 to Segan. In real life, safety systems are all turned on, and in fact I don't think the drivers can turn them off. Any of the drivers in the chat can confirm that for me. It's like in the UK, drivers can't turn off AWS. It needs an engineer with a key to turn them off, or a supervisor. And it's illegal to drive in the UK without them turned on, unless you've got special dispensation. Right, let's get the doors opened. Put it in gear and open the doors. Right, safety systems on this train are turned on over here. So it's this button here, and this one is SIFA. There is no LZB on this train. We originally did implement LZB on this train, but we were told it doesn't have LZB, so we took it out. So you can see here that this is the PZB is turned on, and it's got 85 kilometers per hour. PZB bridging, someone explained it to me, and I didn't really understand it, so don't worry about it. Is it easier to learn PZB on Talent 2? Oh, I don't think it's any easier at all, to be honest. They're both the same. PZB functionally identical. The only difference is that you've got these 3 squares here which light up, rather than having 6 independent lights. But the same things will show up, so you get a yellow 1000 hertz showing up here, for example. The 85 blinks, or the 85 changes. So you can see all the same information, it's just displayed slightly different. In the UK, drivers can break the switch on the door power interlock. There's sort of a seal that shows it's been disabled. Yes, yeah. Trains from Hauptstrecke Rhein-Ruhr are supposed to appear on this route. No, Migmad Marine. It is Rhein-Ruhr, Osten and Mainz-Besserbahn are the 2 add-ons you're waiting for to add more services. Right, 10:20 is what we're waiting for. It's time to go. British signals seem simpler and easier than German signalling, but they don't offer anywhere near as much protection as the German signalling does. That's the key. There is a lot more to it, but you get a lot more protection. It has a switch, Ralph, but I don't think that. Well, we were told it wasn't implemented on the on there, so Beta team laughed hard at us when we implemented it and said, "Get that off there." Right. So we are limited. It says again, this is because start program, so you can see it blinking, and it says 45, but again we should stick to 40. US signals are simpler to some extent, but they are. I mean, there's probably 4 or 5 aspects in Germany and 4 or 5 aspects in the UK. Some US systems have 20-something aspects. So actually, in some respects, they're not as they're more complicated. But what you don't have is PZB, then double checking and giving you an exam question after every signal goes by. Right, this end, we're out of any kind of problem area, so it's all gone steady. Just waiting for it to bump our speed up. In reality, the safety systems can be switched off in case of failure. Maximum speed is then 50 kilometers an hour. There you go. Yeah, that makes sense. Right, we can now speed up Aachen-Rotherd in 1.1 kilometers our next station. But yes, this is where the PZB shows up on here. It is basically the same information, but it's just rendered slightly differently. Once you get the hang of it, you'll see what I mean. All the stuff I've talked about on the ICE is still relevant on this one. Right, coming around to Aachen-Rotherd, again that signal's fine. I'm not sure whether we come up against much in the way of negative signals. We'll give it a few stops. Correct me if I'm wrong, with US signals varies per railroad. There's subtle there are variations, but there is common theme there. Yeah, so the if it ain't already, it ain't red rule applies. Wow, I did a top job stopping at that station, didn't I? Brilliant job. Paying attention to what you're doing there, Matt. Well done. Bookfire plan, oh my god, I can't remember the name of it now. Yeah, you mean this thing on the right hand side? It's something the team have been researching. I'm not going to commit to when it will come in, but it's certainly something on our list of on our long list of wish. But again, if it's not on the roadmap, it's not being worked on. That's always the rule. Regardless of what I say might be on a wish list, if it's not on the roadmap, then it's not being worked on. I must admit, I normally use them in the dark mode than the light mode, because particularly if it's at night, because it stops your night vision getting ruined. Right, Stolberg is next. Like I said, we'll give it a couple of stops and we'll see whether or not we get any kind of PZB fun before we finish. And for those of you who want a copy of the PowerPoint earlier on, like I said, I'll pass that over to the team, and they'll try and get that out to you in some form. Whether they send it out in the format I give them, or whether they make it less bad. Right, the other thing you can do on this is you've got cruise control. You've got the equivalent of AFB. Just press that button. It's not quite AFB, it's actually called tempermat rather than AFB. But it's like a speed set in the UK. Basically will hold the speed. It won't necessarily apply the brakes to slow it down or maintain speed, but it will maintain the speed. Matt C, PZB stops you on HRR for no apparent reason. So there's an additional wrinkle on PZB that I've not covered because it's just more complexity. Which is what they call speed magnets, GU magnets. And what they are doing is checking how fast you're going at certain points in the journey. So if you're coming across, if you're doing say 160 kilometers an hour, and you get a warning sign for 130 kilometers an hour, at some point between that sign for 130 and the sign and the actual start of the enforcement of the speed, there'll be three magnets that makes sure that you're some midpoint down that deceleration. So if you're like me and you naturally wait till the last minute, drop anchors and slow and go through, then those things will always put you onto emergency brakes. So the bottom line is, as soon as you see a request to get you down below a certain speed, get yourself down below that speed without delay, and then you won't have a problem with the speed magnets. I don't know whether the Talent 2 NTS1 has the temper mat functionality, Crucible. Right, I can accelerate now. .3.1 for Stolberg. Set for 140. Temper mat works on this train, David, but I don't know whether it works on TS1. You have the cursor. No, temper mat doesn't apply brakes as far as I'm aware, Big Door. That's one of the key differences between temper mat and AFB. Right, we've got 120 limit coming up and we've got a stop coming up. So I'm going to apply brakes and try not to blow through this station. Was it? Oh, okay. Oh, it does. Well, it blows dynamics, maybe we're not airs. Something like that. Applying dynamic brakes is easy, applying air brakes is hard. Only me, depends how far downhill, as someone said. I think it applies the electric brake, so you have some braking. And probably for something like a Talent 2 it'll be fine. But if you're on a freight train, well actually it wouldn't be a freight train, don't freight trains have temper mat. But if you find it's not braking enough, then you'll need to assist it with some actual braking. The key thing though is when you've got any kind of temper mat or AFB turned on, is you are still driving that train. It's still your responsibility to maintain the speed. You also shouldn't rely on AFB or temper mat to reduce you for PZB restrictions. Again, you're driving the train, you do it. Yeah, this is the control for the temper mat here. You can use this to make it go up and down. I believe. Oops, getting out the key one up. Yeah, R and F are the keys for operating that. Manual braking doesn't disable AFB, but anytime you adjust this control, it switches off temper mat. You'll have to reapply it again. There's no max level for driver profiles that I'm aware of, Nicole, no. No, that's for a different train. So we've got clear with proceed. These are actually HP signals in this direction, not KS. This one is KS signal, expect stop. So yeah, there's nothing there coming up. 40 seconds, we'll get to go. Ebola, that's the word I was trying to think of, cornflakes. I don't know why I forgot that. HP signals, do they light up red or brown? Why are you on the 3 tracks, Jonathan? So when the timetable was built for this route, all the platform allocations have been done based on the timetable. So the timetable said that this train was on this platform, so that's why it's here. Right, we're accelerating again. We haven't got any kind of... Whenever you accelerate from a station, once you're up above about 5-10 kilometres an hour, have an eye out on what's going on and see whether or not suddenly you switch into monitoring. Now again, if you're paying attention, you'll know when to expect it to have done that. But if in case your concentration drifts, as mine does quite regularly, it's always worth reminding yourself. It's a good point to recheck in to see what's going on. Shard and Wembley are modelled, but they're outside the draw distance. The team are having a look at what we can do about that. Schweiler is coming up. Red thing on the left of the cab, it's for shouting at people. It's a megaphone. No, it doesn't work. Whoops. Speed restriction. Paying no attention to it at all. Control R sets the temper band, does it? I hadn't realised what the keyboard command was. I always press the button. Eschweiler is your home, is it, Tim? Excellent. Well, I think we're probably going to finish the stream at Eschweiler, actually. This is the other side of this tunnel. I pronounce most German things wrong, Nicole. How do you adjust the cab POV and mouse control separately? So mouse wheel is controlling that, and if you right click you toggle between the mouse and the mouse look. Okay, I think we'll call it time there. So just as a reminder then, if you want to remind yourself of anything, go back through the stream. It'll be up on YouTube probably imminently after, and Twitch certainly imminently after I press the end button. What we covered today was, I started off with a 23-page school session going through an outline of PZB, LZB, AFB, SIFA and German signals. How to use them and some of the various things that you'll see, what to look out for. And then we did a westbound run in the IC3M using all of those systems, and I tried to talk through as I went through them. And then we've done a brief look at the Talent 2 as well, so it's basically the same, and we're not seeing any kind of adverse aspects on the particular service. So what I would ask is, if you've got feedback on this, please can you post it to the forums. What you want to see more of, what you want to see less of, what other types of tutorials you specifically want to see, but don't worry too much about that. I already know kind of what you want to see. We've had lots of requests for tutorials. But what I want to know is, in terms of a style, what you thought about this style, and how you think it could be improved. Where I talked too fast, or I didn't cover anything, or where I spent far too long going over and over and over the same thing, tell me what you think, and see how you go. Yeah, so okay, so I think you follow 60% of what's going on. That wouldn't surprise me. This is, like I said at the beginning, drivers spend more than 1 or 2 hours learning this stuff. You are going to spend more than 1 or 2 hours, probably more than a driver would, because you don't have an expert teaching you. You got me. Practice, go through it, and you are going to fail over and over again. Don't let it make you feel sad. Just do it again. find out why you did wrong and learn to do it better each time. And as you do it, eventually you'll click. And I'll tell you what, that first time you've done a journey and you've had all sorts of PZB shenanigans going on, and you get to the end and it hasn't gone wrong, wow, that feels good. You have never felt anything as satisfying as when you've done that. You feel like you're driving a train. Where did I learn all of this? Lots of very, very patient people getting very angry. Yes, I think Mike Galt's actually at Virtual Railroads, as it was back then in TS1, who is still helping. In fact, Mike did the sounds for the Talent 2 here. Was one of the first people to bang his head against the desk trying to teach me PZB, and there have been many other people since then, and still are. And a big shout out to Jan Shadoba as well from the TS1 scenario authoring front, who was also many times sent me lots of corrections where I've thought I've done a scenario right, and he sent me a big load of notes saying, well, here's where you didn't quite get it right, but do it better. So yeah, I really appreciate all of that kind of help. It's been great. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to seeing your feedback, and like I said, watch this video again if you want more help. Pass it around to other people that need more help, and show me how you're getting on with PZB, LZB, SIFA and AFB. Alright folks, take care, bye bye.